All right, everybody's awake. We have a little clicker, so it's on. Not really. You guys can see that, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want anyone to get bored and it starts to get dark, and then you might want to fall asleep. So we're at the Raptor Center of Tampa Bay. We always say we're kind of bound together through the Eagles, and the reason I say that is many of us started rescuing birds because we were part of Audubon Eaglewatch. So there's some folks here, Cheryl and Maggie both participate in that program, and I noticed I saw a couple other Eaglewatch shirts, but that's an Audubon program where at least 2 times a month you go and observe a bald eagle's nest and then record the observation. And that's really an important data tool because FWC doesn't do that anymore. They kind of rely on Audubon to do that. So it's important data. And I got a call one day saying my baby eagle had fallen out of the nest and I was going to could I go rescue it? And I was like, hold on a second. I thought we were supposed to be just watching bald eagles. I didn't know we were supposed to be touching bald eagles. And that bird unfortunately had 2 broken legs. We did transport it to Audubon and sadly it had to be euthanized. The next eagle I rescued was, get this, MacDill Air Force Base on the 4th of July. That bird did make it to release. I was working with a rehabber that's long since retired at the time, and we were able to release that bird, and I thought that's probably about the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. And here, 250 something or 260 eagles later, we have helped lots of birds. We are partners with Audubon, with the eagles. We do a lot of rescuing in the Tampa Bay area. All our eagles go to them if they have room. So because they're a premier facility for eagles around the state, they do fill up because all of us send them our eagles. So you're going to hear a bit more about that. But over the last 14 years, and 10 years in particular, we've been watching eagles and really looking at and saying, you know, as a rescue organization, you see the worst of the worst, okay? If you follow us, how many people follow us on Facebook? So you see a lot of stuff on Facebook. You saw recently there was a bald eagle we had to euthanize. You didn't see the 3 we picked up the day before that all were dead by the time we got there. Okay, so we don't put a lot of the bad that we do, but the good that we do is so good that we really rejoice and celebrate every single bird that can get out. So we thought today we'd really talk to you about like what happens to bald eagles. Why do they end up in the care of rehabbers? Why do they end up on the ground? They're just now back in the area. Eagle season started October 1st for breeding season. And as I started saying, the folks from the Raptor Center will tell you about 4 weeks ago, I started saying, we're 3 or 4 weeks away from our first good fight, okay? These birds fight for territory, and they do fight to the death, okay? Some of we have seen eagles kill other eagles. It's pretty violent, but that's the world they live in. So what happens to bald eagles? Let's see if I've got this thing. Do I have it on? There we go. So what are the top threats to bald eagles? So let's see if we can guess those before I tell you what they are. So and you two can't answer. Okay. Yes. Rodenticide, that certainly is one. What's another one?
Human interaction.
Human interaction, specifically what way? What's that?
Vehicles.
Okay, collisions, struck by cars. What else happens? Development, so habitat destruction, right? What else? There's one out there that you might not think about, and that is lead poison, okay? We have habitat destruction, collisions, we're going to talk about each one of these. Entanglement, big issue, okay? We see eagles every year just about that are entangled in nests with fishing line, and your rodenticide. So the first one we're going to talk about is lead poison. And lead poison, what do they say with humans? You know, they say like blood pressure, high blood pressure, right? They call that the silent killer, right? And bald eagles, lead poisoning is what we call it, the silent killer. Because now these statistics are from the American Eagle Foundation, and they say 47% of all eagles that are brought into captivity show signs of chronic poisoning. I did consult with Sam Little at the Audubon Center for Birds of Prey, who in my opinion is like the lab guru. for eagles and what goes on with their blood. She said at the Audubon Center for Birds of Prey, 23% of their eagles are testing positive for lead like this. The one thing that I can say is by working with Audubon, they are experts in eagles, and a lot of times people say, why do you specialize? Well, this is one of the reasons. Many years ago, Tampa Bay Raptor Rescue that Barb runs now, we were just out rescuing birds, and we were taking them all to Audubon. We were not rehabbers yet. And we would take them there, and they would say, well, maybe they have lead poison. And then they have to take their blood, they have to send it out to a lab. And that was taking days. And the therapy they need to start, it's not cheap, right? So we don't want to do it unless we have to do it, and we know specifically what are those birds' numbers. So we did a fundraiser. We bought the blood analyzer that you guys have because we thought, you know what? Sam has the knowledge. She can pull the blood. We don't have that knowledge. And they can analyze the blood right then. So the eagles that come in, if they're not already fatal or critically injured and can afford to give up a little blood, they are all tested for lead poisoning, and 23% of those birds have to then receive therapy for it. So the things that you see, it's interesting for me. I begin to notice, I think that 90% of the time that I'm right, and it's based on the way that the bird's eyes look. And I know that sounds really strange, but to me, their pupils, when they have lead poisoning, seem to be elongated and not perfectly spherical like they should be. So they look just weird, and they look like they're just like down and out. Some of them are laying down. Some of them are just really at a point where you can see other signs, but these are all of the things that happen to them. It's respiratory distress, muscle weakness, seizures, fever. Their organs are starting to fail. And they appear to be drunk, okay? And a lot of times avian influenza has that same symptom. So, especially in crows. So they are not eating well, so they're pooping this bright green poop. That those of us who deal with these birds know that means that that's bile, and they really haven't eaten in a while. But did you know that it's only a little piece of lead the size of a grain of rice that can kill one of these eagles? One bullet shattered into a carcass laying on the ground can actually poison up to 10 bald eagles, because it only takes a little spot, and when an animal is shot, the lead scatters. So not only are we seeing lead in eagles, there's a lot of work being done, and there is, Cheryl, is that Sunny? No. Okay. I thought it when we first brought it up. Yeah. But the thing is that we know that if they come in and it doesn't just happen. People say to me, the bird had lead poison. Well, how'd that happen? Well, it could have had a retained lead sinker from eating a fish. It could have had a little lead pellet retained somewhere in the digestive system. Just like humans, when birds get shot and they have a retained pellet, they don't take it out a lot of times. It'll do more harm than good to dig in the muscle and pull out the little piece. But if it's in the digestive system, it will slowly poison them. Okay, it leaches into the digestive system. But it's a process that, as far as I know, Audubon are the only people that are instantly checking and treating for lead poisoning right away. Right away, no hesitation, no waiting for the lab. They do their own lab work, they get it, and they immediately start therapy. And they can save a lot of those birds. So how can we help? I can tell you that all of the lead poisoning is incidental. No one is going out there and putting lead in the environment and poisoning the eagles or us, okay? What's happening is it's incidentally happening by a fish breaking the line. It's happening when a hunter shoots a deer, guts the deer in the field, and leaves the shrapnel there. The eagles frequently will eat gut piles. They'll eat, all kinds of things they find on the ground. They are a scavenger, okay? They don't mind killing for a living. They love fish, but they just as soon take something that somebody else kills, especially the osprey. They like the osprey the best. They're like, oh, you caught a fish. I don't like the fish. I'll take your fish. But we know that because of that, the only solution is to stop using lead in the environment. Stop using bullets that are lead. Stop using fishing sinkers that are lead. There's a lot of other materials that can be used. So there is, if you look up online, there is a lot of information about lead toxicity in the environment, in fish and in animals and the human population. So this is, you might remember this picture, Cheryl. You know where we were? We were going to Archibald Biological Research Station. This was taken like 6:30 in the morning. The sun came up. We're cruising across, Cheryl and I, cruising across Highway 70. And all of a sudden it was like, stop the car. And we got out, and that beautiful bird, that young bird was sitting there just waiting for us to take the picture. So the other thing that happens is habitat destruction. You can see some of the eagles are as big as we are. That's Cheryl in the flight cage at Audubon. But we mentioned habitat destruction, right? So habitat destruction to us means destroying the trees, right? Every animal or bird that we know of on the planet is suffering from this, okay? Our goal at the Raptor Center, we are a rehabilitation facility, but we spend the bulk of our time doing education. And our motto basically is that we can save the planet. That's what our goal is. Our goal is to not rehabilitate, rescue, and release. Our goal is to save the planet. And you might say, oh, that sounds like a lofty goal, Nancy. There's, a lot to be done. But if everybody can just take care of their piece, that's all we need to do, right? It's our own yard. It's our own community. And just taking care of our own little piece. And planting trees. I can't express that enough. We're going to tell you a little bit more at the end about our Wonders of Wildlife Festival coming up. But that we'll be giving trees away at that festival, and we'll start to give trees away everywhere. We couldn't get them here in time to give them to you guys, but we know that through deforestation, that what do trees do for the environment? Who can tell me what trees' purpose is on the planet? Why are they here? What's that? Why are they here?
To provide air.
They provide our air. That's correct. Okay? So they provide the oxygen we breathe. They take in carbon dioxide and they exude oxygen. They're like an oxygen making machine. So when I run into people who say they don't like trees, I'm like, you like to breathe, right? So, but the balance of our earth is being offset because we're taking too many trees down. So we know that bald eagles really like these big, high trees, right? They nest in what we call super canopy trees. We start looking for big trees. We have eagles right now, HLO 47, okay, at 75 and 301. They were on a tower, and they've taken the tower off. Now, they might be replacing it with something that doesn't have platforms because they really want the birds off their towers. And guess what? We want the birds off their towers, too. We want the birds back in trees where they belong, okay? A baby eagle that falls out of a nest in a tree is likely to fall on another branch, not 75 feet down onto concrete. Big difference in being able to survive that kind of fall. So they're taking them away, and that we're looking for those birds. So as soon as I was leaving, going by that tower, Cat was driving, I'm like, there's a big bird. Look for that bird. What is that? Is that a vulture? Is that the eagle? What is? Because I'm looking for those birds, because those birds are going to have to find a new home. I know that they've been nesting around my house for years. They're the eagles that got me into eagles. And so I'm out there looking for them because the habitat is important. And even though they've taken away their home, the area is what's important to them. So as long as the area can still support them from a food perspective, they can build a new nest in 2 weeks. And nothing's cooler than watching the eagles break off branches. They hit the pine trees, they hit these dead branches and grab them and then fly back to their nest with them. And that's what's happening right now. That's as the eagles come back and start to rebuild their nest. But deforestation along the coast is particularly damaging for them. You see these storms have also probably taken out, and Eaglewatch will be able to tell that eventually pretty soon as the season starts to get started. But how many of these nice big pine trees did we lose in this storm? And where will the eagles be looking for a new home? Now that's a bird that you probably don't see around here very much that I have. That's me, 2017. That's a golden eagle that was rescued in Hillsborough County. Their habitat is protected by law, but those laws have been relaxed a lot. They're allowing them to do more things. And one of the things that we see a lot is them, the power companies, trying to get them off their structures. And as you see this with osprey all the time, the osprey platforms, Barb has been an expert at moving and helping ospreys for as long as I've known her. And the ospreys were also trying to get off these artificial structures. So people say to me, oh, they're taking the osprey platform down. I'm like, yes, you know, and they're like, no, the birds have nested here. I've been watching them for 10 years. Well, you're not being concerned about the birds. You're being concerned because your little entertainment is going away, because the amount, if you've ever seen a bird that's truly been electrocuted on a power line, there is no saving them. People say to us, oh, the bird's electrocuted. No, they're usually burned. They might get a little jolt, but a bird that's electrocuted is usually, I'm not kidding, blown apart and smoking. Okay, the amount of voltage that goes through the lines, they have to arc the lines, and if two of them together, I saw two vultures land on Bloomingdale Avenue. They were together, they were touching each other. One dropped this wing, one dropped that wing. They both went boom off the power line to the ground. I was talking actually to Lee Fox on the phone at the time that it happened. She's like, you have to go back, you have to go back. And when I went back, literally their chest cavities were blown apart and they were smoking. And I was like, and Tico tells me, and now you've seen electrocution. So when you say birds are surviving electrocution, it's very, very mild compared to what could happen on a power line. So we don't want the ospreys nesting on power lines, you guys. We don't want those big platforms up above there. And we don't want them where they've moved them off the power line and now they're 20 feet from the road. And where are we going to do? We're going to go fish baby osprey out of the street that maybe or maybe not have been hit by cars. So we don't like artificial platforms. We're not a fan of them. Sometimes they have to happen. Sometimes the public insists on it. There's one at Anderson Road out in northern Hillsborough County that the people threw a fit, and Tico finally just put the platform back up. But it's just not. We don't want birds on artificial structures. We want birds nesting in trees. But if we take all their trees away, they got to find something else. So what can we do for deforestation? Plant trees, plant trees, plant trees. That's part of it. But the other thing is, you know, there's a thing called the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And it comes up for renewal every once in a while. And it's important that we really keep that law the way it is. That's the law that protects our birds. That's all of our migratory birds, our eagles. But a lot of people don't realize that the woodpecker in your yard holds the same protection as that bald eagle. Just because that's our national bird, they get lots more attention, okay? They're also really big and really mean, okay? They're strong birds. They do require somebody who knows what they're doing. You know, it's like every time we have a new volunteer, the first time they rescue an eagle, and no offense to the men in the room, but it's always a man when I say, oh, were you scared? No, I wasn't scared. You know what my response always is? If you had any brains, you'd be scared, you know, because it's something you mentally have to prepare yourself. I mean, every time you grab these birds out of a crate, you know, you're going in to get them out of a crate, you're mentally thinking to yourself, you know, what's the move? What's the move? If they grab me by the arm, how am I going to do, you know, and you make sure that doesn't happen. Over time, you get more comfortable. But I have to be honest with you, the first 2 years I handled bald eagles, I was scared to death. I didn't tell anybody that. But all of a sudden, one day I went and did an eagle rescue, got it in the crate, got it back, got it there, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I wasn't scared. You know, I was on height, you know, heightened alert, I mean, adrenaline and everything, but not scared, you know. And if you ever grab a bald eagle, you would know what I mean by, you know, there is a little bit of fear inherent in doing that. Big, strong birds. But we also want to participate in neighborhood cleanups. The majority of entanglement for these birds comes from subdivision ponds. The eagles, a lot of times along the coast, also have issues, okay? But the thing that we see the most is people slinging fishing line into trees in rivers and then pulling back and popping the line and just leaving it there. They're leaving the lure in the tree, they're leaving the line trailing, and these things really are difficult for all wildlife. I can tell you, you know, we talk about entanglement and fishing line. Most people think of these shorebirds, right? I get more barred owls hanging in fishing line than anything else. More than gulls, more than, you know, seabirds, more than pelicans, inland, barred owls hanging in by Maggie's shaking her head. Same thing happens at Audubon. You know, so it's not only our coastal birds that are having an issue with entanglement. entanglement is a big deal, but we mentioned collisions. There's two types of collisions that occur in our country. One of them is with cars. Okay, the 3 DOA Eagles last week that I told you about, were all car hits. Now, I went to a class one time at a FWRA, at a Florida Wildlife Rehabbers Conference, and the lady was talking, and she said, you always got to ask yourself, why couldn't the bird make it across the road? Why couldn't the squirrel make it across the road? Being able to cross a road is a fitness for life test for wildlife today. If you cannot get across a road, there's a good chance you may not survive. So why couldn't they get across the road? We have an incident happening throughout Florida right now with crows. I know you guys don't deal with crows, but there are crows dropping dead all over the place, okay? There were 60 in Ocala this week. 5 of them have gone to the lab in Gainesville to be tested. They have tested negative for avian influenza. We do believe it's West Nile. We know West Nile is 100% fatal for crows. Our birds of prey can recover from it with supportive care, but a crow cannot. If a crow is infected, they die. So we have had 1 in Pinellas, 1 in South Pinellas, 1 in Hillsborough, 6 in Polk County within a 5-block radius. And then when you go up into Hernando County, there are more. And when you go up in the Ocala area, there's a lot more. So we don't know what's happening with that, but we do feel it is a mosquito-borne illness, which these storms will exacerbate, right, and make it worse. We have a 100-foot flight cage in Lakeland, and right now the mosquitoes are so bad that we do not have anything in that flight cage. Because coming dark, it's like thick in there, with mosquitoes. And it's sitting in wetlands. Our flight cage sits in a wetlands area. So even if we could there's water sometimes that sits in the cage. The volunteers that man the cage, they're like, can't we put more dirt in the cage? Well, we can, but the mosquitoes are coming from the wetlands, right? They're still gonna be there. So it's really just the collisions that we have with cars are an issue, but also throughout the Midwest, collisions with wind turbines are the big issue, okay? They estimate that every year, 681,000 birds in 2021. Most of those are big eagles, guys. Those are golden eagles and bald eagles being killed by these wind turbines. So this is a solution. We know sustainable energy is something we all need. We know wind is part of that. But do they need gigantic wind turbine blades to really be able to what can we do about that, right? So there are some solutions the energy field is working on. And when we always talk about energy, what are we talking about? So,
Clean, renewable.
but what do we do? When we use the word energy all the time? What do we really mean? Clean, renewable, yes. But what do we mean when we're talking about energy? I deal with power companies, both of them all the time. So electricity in your house. Big fancy term. Everyone's like, oh, energy, energy, energy. What we're talking about is when you turn on the light, does it come on? All of this is to power the power grid of the United States. So what can we do? And we all need to work together because collisions are a big, huge issue. So are we too serious for the little ones? What's that? So the eagles are still right out front, you guys, if you want to go out there. They're still perched out. But they estimate that if we get to where we want to be with wind by 2030, 1.4 million birds will be killed every year because of that. Now, I want to tell you something that's a depressing thought that you guys may or may not know at Audubon. 681,000 is about the number of raptors that are collectively rehabilitated throughout the United States. They came out about 5 weeks ago, wasn't it 5 weeks ago when I was telling you? Oh, they finally determined that raptor rehabilitation does help conservation. We offset the number of birds killed by the energy industry every year. That's all we're doing. That's scary, you guys. That's very scary. So what can we do about it? It's really looking at putting the right people in office. That's always part of it. But if they continue to use these gigantic wind turbines, we're going to continue to lose our big birds of prey out west. These big birds, it's not surprising. where birds migrate, they migrate 3 places in the United States. They migrate through the Atlantic Flyway, which they come down, and most of them skip Florida and go right down Texas, right? They come down the Central Flyway, or they come down the west, right? So they're all coming down this way. Well, it's not surprising. Those birds are flying in those areas because there's a lot of wind. Tailwinds help them on migration. That's where the wind fields are being placed because they need wind to do this. There are ways that they can make some turbines without these gigantic blades, that the energy industry is coming out with that. Duke Energy just floated all of their solar panels on their cooling pond at their Hines Energy plant. So they're looking for different ways to do things, but this is a problem. This, to me, is one of the bigger problems that our big birds of prey face, and not necessarily in Florida. Okay, we don't have big wind farms in Florida because we don't have big wind.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Do you know what percentage of that 681,000 is actually the raptors versus prey?
We know that for, I would say 90%. I don't know for sure, but it's only big birds that impact these.
Okay.
I would imagine geese and cranes probably are affected as well.
I would think
Anything that's migrating in large groups, which most birds do. You know, if you looked at, what's it called, birdcast, that's what it's called, birdcast, where you can see, not last night, I didn't look at it this morning, but the night before last, where migration is in peak season, right now in Hillsborough County, 1.4 million birds at 1,400 feet passed over Hillsborough County the night before last on their migratory path. So we want to do what we can and turn the lights off for them. This is a bald eagle. This picture was taken by Roger, our buddy Roger, and it was taken a long time ago. And I hate to tell you this now that all the kids have left the room. I guess I was too serious for them. He was going after a cat. That's what he was going after. There was a dead cat in the road, and Roger parked next to the dead cat, and the eagle came in. So for those of you who are photographers, I just tell you that is a tip, you know. Monofilament. Some of you may recognize this picture. I know Maggie and Cheryl do. These are the birds that were in Tennessee in a nest. And I want to tell you how things can work. I don't know why they didn't pull these birds right away, okay? At Audubon and at the Raptor Center and at Tampa Bay Raptor Rescue and Birds in Helping Hands, we work with Shelley as well. When we find entanglement in a nest, we call immediately. We call for extraction of the nest. You know, we're going to call to get a tree climber up there, get a tower climber up there. We've had a tower climber go up there, and he removed, I don't know how much, but there was a ton of monofilament just wrapped around the tower. So we knew for a fact that U.S. Fish and Wildlife would grant approval to go into a nest to get them out. These people let these birds sit in this nest for days, okay? And I don't watch eagle cams. I'm not a fan of them. I think you learn a lot from them, but I think it's very intrusive into their privacy. And the reason I say that is basically because of the birds down there at Fort Myers, okay? You have 2 birds that are on an eagle cam that are famous throughout the world. You have people coming from all over the world to sit outside of that field and look at those birds. We have people that come from this county where there's 250 pairs of bald eagles. There's another 350 pair in Polk County. There's another 200 pairs, you know, but they go down there and park in front of the nest. I'm sorry, that's just extra stress the birds don't need. And you can say, oh, they don't bother them. Maybe it doesn't, but it might bother the rabbit that was going to run across the nest. It was going to be dinner. Right? So there's a lot of other unintentional consequences to me of watching the birds too close. I don't have a problem with the eagle cam as long as nobody knows where it is. You know? But these birds, the reason I mentioned this is, you know, we had a solution. I'm looking at Cheryl because we had a tower where the fishing line was up there, and we got the fishing line out, and happy ending to the story, right? Birds fledged, everything's fine. These birds were up there for days. I don't know why they weren't pulling them, but I got a text from Australia. And the lady said to me, why aren't you pulling those birds? Now, if you're in Australia, you don't have any idea that Brandon is really far away from Tennessee, okay? So I contacted the people that moderate this camera, private message, and said, why aren't you pulling the birds? U.S. Fish and Wildlife will give you the approval. If you can't pull them within the next 12 hours, I will have a climber there. Well, miraculously, American Eagle Foundation stepped up to the plate, went up there and got the bird. Sadly, the bird had to be euthanized. The bird did not live, okay? It had been entangled too long. When you have strangulation of a limb, that doesn't take long. You know, it doesn't take long on us. It really doesn't take long on the birds. But you could even, sometimes you see strangulation because of moss, like on doves, moss, M-O-S-S, on doves. There's some natural moss that's pretty thick. The eagles can get that off. But they can't get monofilament off, and they surely cannot get braided fishing line off. Braided fishing line is something that has to be cut with a knife or a pair of scissors. As sharp as an eagle's beak is, and it's sharp, it will not cut it. An eagle's beak is so sharp that sometimes when you're treating them and they reach over and they just give you that little kiss with the beak, they just touch you, all of a sudden you look down and you're like, darn, I'm bleeding. The tip of that beak is so sharp, right? But there is so much risk to these birds bringing this up into the nest with their young. And if you ever see an eagle's nest and you see somebody that's potentially entangled, you contact one of us. I'll give you their numbers up here. You contact one of us immediately, and we'll see what we can do to try to help that bird. We've got a guy, Moto Mike, in the area that he'd climb up there. He's like a monkey. He'd be right up that tree in a heartbeat. He can handle bald eagles. He handles Barb's eagles all the time. So the last one's rat poison. Steve Hyatt is in the back of the room. This was a bird that he went to rescue, and here you go. Needless to say, she did not make it. But it doesn't matter who eats it. It's bad. We need to outlaw rat poison throughout the United States. Not just Florida, not just Philippi Park, throughout the United States. If you are a rehabber, you know about this. If you're on a rehab website, everybody talks about this. And I know we're here talking about eagles, but I also do mammals. I also fight this with foxes, with coyote, with possums, with skunks. Everyone that's in the natural world whose rodents are their natural diet, we find poisoned, right? I have an armadillo right now, lateral. I'm sure it's insecticide, okay? I can usually bring the armadillos back, wonderful creatures. Our eagles love to eat them. But they're anteaters. They don't even have teeth. They have these little teeny mouths, these long sticky tongues like an anteater, right? But when we get them in, a lot of times they're poisoned with insecticide.
So the rat eats the poison, the fox eats the rat, the eagle eats the fox.
They all get sick. I'm not smart enough to know how that concentrates up the food chain. I just know it does.
But the eagle may be obviously less risk, but still they get sick, and if they're not treated.
The eagles are at more risk because they're lazy hunters, right? They see the rat that's like kind of doing circles down there, like, ooh, easy grab, right?
Directly, obviously it's way worse, but if it's maybe one food chain down the way, it might not be as concentrated, but it's still.
It will be. It'll actually be more concentrated.
Sure.
Yeah, it just. It's poison in general, and this is a Jane Goodall expression. When did we ever say it was okay to poison our environment? Because that's what we do everywhere, right? So we have these anticoagulants, but we also we were happy, and I'll just introduce Steve in the back of the room, standing there, is that Steve has rescued eagles that have died of rat poison and has made it his mission to try to stop using rat poison. So all of our efforts are being done through Steve, and we greatly appreciate that, because this is something that if you even work in a pediatric emergency room, we need to outlaw rat poison. 25,000 children in the United States are poisoned every year.
Even vet hospitals see cats and dogs.
Oh, cats and dogs easily, but literally everything. Like, because we do mammals, everybody eats rats. That's really the truth. So you also notice at the bottom it says, wow, 2024. I'll just take a second to make a pitch for our festival. November 9th, we do have some flyers that you can get on your way out. But if you like wildlife, you will love our festival. Lonnie will be there. And we have a free-flying bird of prey show with EarthQuest with Steve Hottie. And he will have Storm with him, which is an Andean condor, the largest bird of prey in the world, 11-foot wingspan. She's beautiful. And other birds, and he's just a real showman, right? We also have J&T's reptiles. They'll be there with Baby, the 10-foot or 11-foot Burmese python, however big she got this year. The first year I saw Susie holding a picture of her, it took 2 people to hold her. Then the next year was 3 people. Last year at our festival, it was 4 people. This year, I'm expecting it's going to be 5. Okay, and it's a huge, but this is a python that was confiscated from the Everglades. And he also has a monitor lizard, Precious, who is 7 feet long, who he walks on a little harness, but she's precious. And he does a show about invasive reptiles. We do our puppet show called I Can Save the Planet, which is a perspective from 14 different animals who tell what we can do to help them, just like we keep saying, what can you do? What can we do? What can we do? I think it's up to each one of us to take one step forward to try to save the planet. If we don't like to talk to doom and gloom, but scientists say we're in the midst of the 6th mass extinction of life on this planet. There's some information that you read out there that is very forthcoming about this. If you look at our loss of our panthers, our manatees, when I started doing this pitch, it was 25% of our birds had disappeared. Today, it's 32%. So 32% of all the birds in the world have disappeared in my lifetime. Half of the marine mammals have also gone in my lifetime in one generation. So the marine mammals, when we got into conservation and really started looking at that, the ocean is something that we all need to pay attention to. It helps us. But our festival is certainly, just a whole group of wildlife that you can come and enjoy. And there's skunks and possums, and there's art, and there's food, and there's what else?
We'll have multiple vendors. Jane Goodall from Shoots, one of our vendors. The FWC will be there with their animals on display, like the next.
All the agencies are there. Clearwater Marine Aquarium, Florida Aquarium. And there's how many people have been to the festival? Oh, well, you got to go back. But this year, instead of doing the big kids tent, every tent will have kids activities in it. So hopefully we'll be able to get everyone to figure out which animal they like the best and rally around it. You may not like our birds of prey. I know everybody in this room does. But you may not like our birds of prey. Maybe like otters, skunks, opossums, frogs, jellyfish. Whatever anyone likes, they need to rally behind to save it and really work to take action. So we have an animal parade, and guess who's leading our animal parade this year? Smokey Bear. We're so excited. But we want to really work on entanglement. The eagles are an issue. The cranes are a bigger issue, you guys. I say we, it's Lynn. We work together with Lynn Zablo, the crane whisperer, and we're at 162 cranes this year, untangled and released in the field. That is epic numbers. We have been in contact with U.S. Fish and Wildlife to say, what can we do to make this stop? And neighborhood cleanups are part of it. Also, if you live near a lake or area where you do cleanup and you want one of these monofilament tubes, Susie Buchanan right there can show you how to make them. And we have all these decals. We can come help you put one in. They cost about, what, $26? $26 if you have to go buy the PVC. But we have all the stickers and tell you how you can register that, and then we can work with you to do a neighborhood cleanup. So we try to do that everywhere we find these animals. So in summary, make sure to advocate for non-lead use ammunition. That's important. And also in the fishing industry, if you suspect there is something wrong with a bald eagle, you guys go out to the eagle's nest, you're driving along, you see an eagle, you say to yourself, that just don't look right. 90% of the time, trust your gut instinct. If your gut instinct says the animal's in trouble, very well may be. So what are you going to do? You can call me, you can call Cheryl, you can call Barb, but use your voice and vote to support efforts mitigating the effects of wind, okay? But you can call any of us. I can tell you that Cheryl sometimes is here, sometimes she's up in Maitland. I'm in Brandon. Barb's over here in Palm Harbor, Clearwater, here at the park. And we work together. We work with Shelley with Birds and Helping Hands also. But we work together to make sure that whoever is closest can immediately get the bird. Sometimes these birds are hit by cars. And I'll be honest with you, I think we got like 30, 45 minutes to get them. And you say, what happens to them after that? They fly off into the trees and we can't find them. And if a broken leg in the wild to anything, a squirrel, a fox, a bald eagle, especially a bird of prey. A broken leg is a death sentence. Without help, these birds cannot catch food with one foot. And an animal in the wild with a broken leg will die without help. We can get them help, but we see this with foxes and coyote and other things as well. But use your voice, use your voice to really look at it and say, maybe they shouldn't be developing right next to where this preserve is. Speak up and ask one of us. We have resources that we can ask. Kim Rexford's not here, but Kim was able to get a property bought by the county that had an eagle's nest on it to preserve it. So we have to speak up for the wildlife. So sign up for neighborhood cleanups or initiate one in your own neighborhood. Don't ever use rat poison, and please don't use glue traps. Glue traps just are terrible. I know that they trap the animal, and if you have the guts to go kill the thing when it's sitting on the pad screaming its head off, it's the most horrendous thing. But we get birds on them. We get baby possums on them. I got a baby possum on it this year, shoulder completely separated from the people trying to yank it off the glue trap. When all they had to do was put peanut butter on the glue trap and the bird would come right off. It's with that a lot of people use oil. Once oil gets all over the bird's feathers, that's all got to come off, and they've got to re-oil their feathers with their own oil, right? So now we have this waterproofing issue. We have birds in captivity longer than they need to be. But glue traps are terrible. Like I said, everything gets stuck on them. So working together, we can save the planet. And that concludes my part of the presentation. Do you have any questions or anything, comments, whatever you want to say? Yes. What's the impact of red tide on the eagles? Impact of red tide on the eagles is there. We certainly see it. But it's not as prevalent as it is with the seabirds. A lot of our eagles are freshwater. They're fishing freshwater as opposed to coastal water. So we don't see it in the same numbers. I mean, we work with Seaside Seabird and Save Our Seabirds, and the numbers they get the red tide in with the birds. We use the same protocol they do when we get them in, but typically there's other issues with them. It's not just red tide. I don't recall really getting a bird saying, "Oh, it's red tide." Do you guys remember that at all? And I think it's because our birds are more inland birds. So, and in the places in the world where the eagles are fishing all just predominantly salt water, like Alaska, they don't have red tide that I know of. Yes?
Duck hunting is going to be starting up again at the end of November. It goes all the way through January.
Correct.
I'm at John Chesson at 7 o'clock religiously every single day. And they're getting way too close to the shelters. The one day I literally fell to my knees because I thought I got shot. That's how close they are. I've tried so many different avenues. I've written every politician and everybody else I can think of. Is there anything else we can do?
I am not aware of it. We also have been advocates for stopping duck hunting, especially in Tampa Bay. They're hunting on the spoil islands out there where our birds nest, and the winter birds winter. It's full of terns right now, and the ducks are not here yet, as you know. They're just now arriving, but I do agree with you 100%. And I don't know. Maybe we could talk about that and see. I've talked to FWC extensively about it, and they tell me that it's considered international waters, and they can't stop hunting in international waters. I'm still saying, well, I think if everybody that surrounded that bay had something to say about it, maybe we could do something. It's got to be St. Pete, Tampa, the Oldsmar. It's anybody who lines Tampa Bay, because they are shooting. If you live south of Gandy and you're in West Shore Yacht Club where you paid $500,000 for your house, they're shooting right off your dock first thing in the morning, and they're shooting ducks. It's horrible. Yeah. It's absolutely horrible.
Well, the thing is, there was supposed to be a new rule written. Okay, they were working on it. Paul Coffey from Pinellas County was working on it, and I would suggest little pressure on him to ask. I did pressure him, but did he have the meeting with the person that was going to make the person that was making the new rule? I guess at FWC left, and they got a new person in. I have some probably email information on who that was, but I think probably pressuring them for a revision of the rule was basically distinguishing, making some qualifiers so you can or cannot hunt in certain places like Lake call them Kate and William, and we watched them every day. I mean, it was like great pictures the other day of them, and they shoot, they fly over back and forth every day. Yep. And the duck hunters were out there shooting a big bunch of, I don't know what they were, some kind of ducks. And
Well, they're also shooting their food. I mean,
yeah.
so, and in an area, I guess, from what my point of view is, we've already developed this area. So now it should be safe for the animals to return. It shouldn't remain a problem.